know. I don't know what to call it. The infighting, the bad branding. I don't know what it is. So this is actually from DCComics.com. And this is what the headline of the article reads. It says DC and HBO Max announce new original digital comic series. So we've got these covers here that we can see. It's called To the Max, and we can see these various characters. It's an HBO Max world premiere comic book event. So we've got 3 new comic book superheroes are taking it to the max in the brand new original digital comic book serials titled To the Max, published by DC in collaboration with HBO Max. To the Max features stories about ordinary people achieving their maximum potential while they transform into extraordinary superheroes with the help of another new character, Max the dog. The new comics also celebrate the recent launch of the new HBO Max and are chock full of Easter eggs and fun nods to much of the 10,000 hours of premium content currently available on the streaming platform, such as Friends, HBO's Game of Thrones, The Big Bang Theory, HBO's Sex and the City, Scooby-Doo, and more. Can you find them all? Free to download starting today, this initial launch of the digital comic includes 3 8-page chapters featuring everyday people, Hector, Brian, and Olivia, who meet Max the dog, gain access to different superpowers, and become able to teleport, shapeshift, fly, and save lives around the world. The comics embody the theme that HBO Max has something for everybody, and that everybody can be their own superhero and take themselves to the max. So I just thought that this was very interesting. It says that To the Max comics are available for free on digital retailers starting on June 15th, so that means that they're available now. I'm just really, really curious about your take on this story, Dave, and what you think of this.
Well, I was trying to find a picture of Max the dog, actually, while you were talking about this, and I couldn't find one. And I found all kinds of weird stories about some show or some dog show on HBO Max or some controversy or something about it. I don't know. I was just wanting to see what the dog looked like because I don't actually see Max the dog on any of these covers.
No, I don't either. That's pretty interesting. When you think
yeah, I mean, it's like, well, where's the friggin' dog? Shouldn't he be able to fly? Like, that's what I want to see. All right, so before you said Max the dog, I was yawning. That's my whole take on this. You know, and I shouldn't be so heavy-handed. I mean, I literally have hanging actually above my studio. I can just glance up and see it. I have an original page of artwork from Atari Force. And, of course, DC Comics produced the Atari Force comic book series in conjunction with Atari to help promote Atari. Of course, the Atari is one of the original, gaming home, gaming systems back in the day. So, these kind of things to me, they always depend upon who the creative teams are that's actually doing the books. And I'm not talking about the covers because they always get A-list talent for the covers. I'm talking to people that are actually doing all the heavy lifting on the interiors to actually bring this thing to life. These kind of productions, to me, that's what they're at the end of the day, they're always measured by. How entertaining is the story that's actually inside? It's interesting. I mean, I had seen something about this before, but again, I've been so busy with so many different things, I hadn't spent a lot of time investigating it. What I want to know is if you can actually download these HBO Max comics for free on Comixology. So I'm pulling up Comixology right now. That's my main service I use to read free comics. I don't see it being promoted here. Let me do a quick search and just see. Can you actually get that? Actually, here on the there it is. It's not heavily promoted, but you can actually read this HBO Max digital series actually for free on Comixology. Okay, so just because of that, I'm putting them in my cart, and I will check them out. And next week, I will let you all know what I think about them.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Now, what I think is interesting is sort of the business marketing aspect of this, because you've talked a lot about, in fact, you predicted a long time ago that DC Universe would be like one of the first casualties of the streaming wars. And one of the things you actually praised, and you've praised numerous times about DC Universe, is all the comic book content. That you thought that was sort of a unique selling point. And I just think it's interesting what they're doing here, where I imagine these are available on DC Universe. It's hard for me to imagine they wouldn't be, especially if they're available on Comixology. But it just seems weird. And part of me is like thinking, are they kind of testing the waters here to see if they can move that comic content somewhere else and tie it in more directly to HBO Max? Because again, my angle is I feel like DC Universe and HBO Max are walking all over each other.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it feels like they are as well. I don't know. It does feel like they're sort of, competing with themselves and not, I mean, the big thing with me that I sort of understand is, they always told us that when they did the New 52, that was all part of, at that time, the effort to take, basically DC Comics library of characters, those popular, valuable franchises, obviously not Superman and Batman, that were obviously, well-known household names, but a lot of the other characters that were not as well known, characters like Green Lantern, characters like hopefully like Booster Gold, The Question, all these other characters, and actually take them and integrate them across all these different things so that they could be, have a larger role in the movies and have a larger role in the TV shows and introduce these and also leverage them so that these characters could be used across all kinds of different opportunities within the totality of what they were, trying to do, as a company whole vision, to have it all be more connected. So the only thing with that this particular thing I find interesting, it's cool that DC Comics is producing these. I was looking at the interiors. The interiors look pretty good. So I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, I did find the dog.
How's the dog look?
The dog is okay. The dog's not what I was expecting. But I guess the only thing is I'm curious to see like if the other DC heroes play a role in these stories. That's the thing. It's like, the Max the dog is an interesting connection, but why can't you have these heroes, meeting Superman or meeting Batman or meeting Wonder Woman? And how about the movie versions? Since we're going to have the Zack Snyder Justice League, on the HBO Max, like let's take this whole interconnectivity synergy thing. Let's just take it to the next level, But that's just me spitballing. Obviously, that's a horrible idea because I didn't do it. But no, I don't know. We'll see. I just that's the thing I'm always shocked at is like, well, I thought all this was to bring it together. So why aren't you able to access all this amazing content of the DC Universe app through HBO Max? Like, I don't understand why they're not. I mean, to me, because all of these stories start with the comics first, and then they proliferate out, and then you're looking at the movies and the TV shows and the cartoons and whatever that comes kind of after that. So I'm always surprised they don't make more of an effort to get people more vested, more interested, and introduced just into the comics themselves. I mean, I think the last major push, besides obviously something like this, but this is to more promote HBO Max than to get people into the comics, or again, Batman, Superman, whoever would be in these series too, as along with Max the dog, or Crypto. They maybe these people could have met Crypto the super dog. That would be kind of fun and interesting, and then he introduces them to this larger world, and they discover they have powers, and they team up with some of the DC heroes to take on some classic villains. But that's what I would have done. Obviously, that's a horribly bad idea, but that's what I would have done.
I think it's just. I think your ideas are fantastic, but I don't understand why they do things. Well, I shouldn't say I don't understand. I do understand a little bit of it, actually a lot of it because of stories you've told me. But to me, it almost feels like this is, since they're having all these weird issues right now, where they're having to rotate all the Time Warner DC-related content. We talked about that last week. They're having to rotate it out. They can't keep it up there, apparently, because they're sharing it with DC Universe. And it feels like the same thing is happening here, where it's like now HBO Max has started to dip its toe into the world of comics, digital comics, and rather than tie it in directly with DC Universe and even with the regular DC characters, they just went ahead and created their own characters. They created all these new characters and said, okay, now we're going to have our own superheroes on HBO Max. In some ways, you wonder whether this is sort of like a very soft debut for like HBO, the HBO Max verse. Like before, we talked about the possibility of a Snyderverse, where basically they might actually do things like bring Ben Affleck back as Batman, and that would be completely separate from The Batman, the other film that's coming out, and it would just be on HBO Max. It would be an exclusive that might follow up on the Snyder Cut, which, by the way, I think is going to happen if the Snyder Cut is a massive success. The Snyder Cut is a massive success and brings in tons and tons of people to HBO Max. I think the Ben Affleck Batman suddenly becomes a real possibility. Same thing here is I feel like if these comics are popular, then HBO Max might offer some sort of a digital comic book option, but with their characters. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but there already is an HBO comic book universe that they're doing in a show. It's called Watchmen.
Yeah, well, Watchmen is has very mixed reviews. I mean, I've heard some absolutely. I mean, I know that there's some very prominent YouTubers that absolutely hated that show, absolutely hated it.
Well, and I meant that as kind of a joke, but it didn't work. But
well, this is streaming wars. This is a
yeah,
segment here.
But no, could it be? It's possible. I mean, I look at the success of Atari Force. Initially looking at these, I don't see these being anything more than just an initial tie-in thing. I mean, maybe there's some interesting concepts that they'll revisit and maybe they'll continue to move beyond, just this initial sort of promotional thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if it's super popular, it could be the beginning of the introduction of an HBO Max superhero universe. That's possible. I wouldn't say no to that initially in terms of like someone thinking it's a good idea. I'm not sure I think it's a good idea. I
definitely don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a terrible idea. I'm in the camp that says, why aren't they just doing something like you just said? Why do they need this Max dog? Why couldn't they have used crypto? Why are they introducing these new characters when they have all these other tie-ins that they could use, like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman? You know what I mean? Why am I not seeing those three on these covers right now? That's what I think is so strange about this story. And it's kind of a bigger story that we've been covering now ever since HBO Max started, which is like, what the hell is the CEO of AT&T doing? Are they just like completely not invested in this stuff because they're too busy selling mobile phones? Like, somebody needs to start reining this stuff in. That's the angle I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, we'll just have to see what they do with this. I mean, to me, like I said, the thing to do would have been to have them introduced into the DC universe a little bit more, and then use this not only as an entryway and hopefully into obviously what HBO Max has, but to take that even further and try and get people to read more of the DC Comics material and get them more into the DC Comics library in general, through HBO Max, but that's just my personal, opinion, what I would have probably done. I do want to shout out a Arizona connection real quick, though, because again, looking at these and reviewing the creative talent involved, Hi-Fi Color, which is based out of Arizona, Brian and Christy Miller, Hi-Fi actually did the color on these, so that's cool.
They also did the color for the cover of the primary cover for the Occupants tie-in comic book that I mentioned earlier in the program. So we've actually, both of us have actually worked with them before because they did the color for that as well. So that's good on them. Good on them.
Yeah, and they also colored too. In addition to that, some of my favorite comic book covers I've ever had the chance to work on was actually Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. Scott and I did a series of 8 classic superhero, Legion of Superhero images. One of the coolest was actually the Legion in their classic costumes, standing on top of the what they used to call the Rocket Clubhouse, which was the Legion's original headquarters. And then they took that same artwork and they actually used that for the Hero Clicks packaging art. And Brian actually colored that. So that's really cool too.
That is cool. Very, very cool. Nice to have that kind of local connection as well. The Hi-Fi does good stuff, and they do a lot of, obviously, the big mainstream stuff with DC and Marvel. So they're kind of the top of the game, as it were, you know?
Very cool. Yeah. And I just wanted to shout that out because I thought that was an interesting connection.